I've always thought of Andy as a pioneer. When I think Andy Staples, I think pioneer Andy, like Lewis and Clark. You're right up there.
Yeah, we're Sacagawea. No, I think I'm more of a Pied Piper than a pioneer. I
Okay,
just
yeah,
sort
yes,
of,
yes. Yeah.
lead everybody where they're gonna. No, look. My decision was easy. You take people who have done a thing a couple times already and had success with it, and they're doing it a third time, and they've refined the process, and all they care about is college sports, which is pretty much all I care about professionally. Pretty easy decision.
You and Chris Lowe, one of your new colleagues, Chris Lowe, reported about Alabama booster unrest after the Florida State game. I assume that same booster has called you back after the La Monroe win. It's like, hey, it's all good now. They scored 73 against La Monroe.
Oh yeah, they scored 73.
Yeah.
I believe what did the social media graphics say? Still Bama. So yeah, it's problems are all solved. Don't worry about it, guys. We can go. Just turn your gaze to Gainesville. It'll be fine.
Well, yeah, we're going to get to that in a moment. But the truth is, obviously, we live here. We're right in the middle of it. We talk about it every day. There's not an Alabama fan out there that's going to believe anything until they see it against Georgia. So they can do whatever they want to Wisconsin Saturday. It's not going to matter until they see what happens in Athens, and that's the way it is right now.
I would agree with that, Ryan. I think that's exactly the way to approach it. And I was thinking about this Wisconsin game. As I was at the Alabama Wisconsin game last year in Madison, and it feels like it's almost the same game. Wisconsin's starting QB got hurt in that game rather than getting hurt 2 games earlier this year, but it's probably Alabama against a backup Wisconsin quarterback, and I imagine we're going to see pretty much the same game. And that doesn't necessarily tell us anything when the worry is that this Alabama team is just like last year's Alabama team. So, like you said, you want to see it against Georgia. But the funny thing is, last year's Alabama team took a 28-0 lead against Georgia too.
It's
so
true.
I think it's going to be interesting to see how they progress, because I think the fear is not necessarily that Alabama will. Obviously, if Georgia clobbers them, that's a different story. But I think the fear is that Alabama has become a type of team that gets up for the big games and doesn't get up for the games that they don't think are big, which is antithetical to everything Nick Saban believed. And every coach wants their team to be consistent from week to week. Nick Saban's superpower was actually making his team do it. And so I think that's the interesting part. And I don't know that we get to figure that part out until that Vandy, Missouri kind of stretch, where those are games where typically you'd think Alabama's going to win those. They're going to roll in those games. But those are really good teams this year that, if you don't come to play, can beat you. And obviously they learned that against Vanderbilt last year. So that's the thing. We're really not going to know what this Alabama team is until probably a couple weeks after that Georgia game.
And the reality is, Andy, there was a time not long ago where Alabama, the games were over after the first quarter. We were talking about this on the last segment. When you look at this Alabama schedule, if you're an Alabama fan, what games are you comfortable with? We said Eastern Illinois. We think Wisconsin this weekend. Maybe Vanderbilt at home, just based on the fact that they beat Alabama last year. But outside of that, we're living in a reality now where week in, week out in the SEC, it literally is the NFL. Would you agree that, I don't know if it's ever coming back. It seems like we're going to get a lot of one-possession games. Every weekend we're going to get a massive upset. And the reality is, at the end of the season, you're going to get some 10-2s and some 9-3s. You're not going to get undefeated teams.
Yeah, I don't think so either, Lance, because the cumulative effect of a lot of these games is going to wear on teams. Like for Alabama specifically, so they get the open date before Georgia, but you go Georgia, Vandy, Missouri, Tennessee, South Carolina. I don't know that there's a team in the country that's going to go undefeated through that stretch. Oklahoma, we saw them against Michigan. They looked amazing. They looked like they're going to be much better than last year. But look at their last 7 games in a row. It's the hardest 7-game stretch I think I've ever seen in college football history. So you're right. It really depends on how you manage that, how you handle the cumulative effect of the physical, the physicality of play in the SEC, and are you going to get a little lucky? Because even the best teams, you're right, are going to take losses in this scenario. And when they go to 9 conference games, same, just more.
As a former Florida Gator walk-on, how tough is it for you to do your job and not get emotional about the Florida Gators and where they are right now?
Not at all, because I've been doing this a long time. It's interesting. I've thought about this because in this media environment, it's actually better to be the super fan, and I think people connect with that more.
Yeah.
But I came up in the old days where you just you cover the team you cover, and you don't get emotionally invested in the games and don't worry about it. I mean, the thing is, I actually had to make the choice between being on the Florida football team and doing this job when I was in college, because back then you couldn't be on the football team and cover sports for the school paper. So I had to leave the team to work for the school paper. And, that wouldn't happen now. Now I'd have my own podcast. I'd be doing restaurant reviews and stuff like that. And I'd stayed on the team. And that would have been better for me professionally. But it's a different time now. So, and I covered Florida as a beat writer. So you really don't, once you do that, you don't get emotionally invested in the outcome of any game. And you realize, hey, people are just people, and the people change.
Yeah. Do you have a room, though, that you walk into, maybe a dark room, a soundproof room in your home, and occasionally just scream at the football gods?
No, not really.
They make him a good
I was
living.
on the first national championship team.
But are you
Nobody's coming in and
shocked?
taking my ring.
But Andy, are you shocked though that Florida is in a situation where in year 4, Billy Napier is 20-20? Did you ever think a coach could coach for 3+ years and be 20-20 at Florida after what Spurrier built and then Urban Meyer continued to dominate with?
No, I didn't, because they've been pretty quick on the trigger before. McElwain got fired when they got sideways. When it was clear Dan Mullen's recruiting wasn't going to be good enough, he got fired despite a really good record at that point. Not in that season, but the first 3 seasons of Dan Mullen were really good. No, I think what this was is it was a rebuke of Dan Mullen, where you're saying, okay, you're going to recruit in a way that you build a roster that can be competitive long term. The thing is, and I think this is the part where there's a disconnect, is that you still have to do the winning part of it. And, they gave him time. He was going to get fired last year. The decision was made to fire him after the Texas A&M game. Then he gets forced into starting DJ Lagway when Graham Mertz gets hurt against Tennessee. That looks very promising. They decide, even before he beats LSU and Ole Miss, that they're going to bring him back because they like the idea of DJ Lagway leading this roster. And then he beats LSU and Ole Miss. So some of the things that would have been required, because when he was told he was coming back, he was also told one of the conditions of your return is you hire an offensive coordinator who will take play calling away from you. Once he beat LSU and Ole Miss last year, he didn't have to do that anymore. He developed enough juice that he didn't have to listen to that. That's still the problem, as you saw in the USF game. Play calling still the problem. The balance of being the CEO and the play caller still the problem. And some guys can do it and some guys aren't good at it. And Billy Napier's not been able to balance those two things. And so I think that's the biggest part of it now, is you got that kind of fool's gold. And I bought into it too. When they beat LSU and Ole Miss last year, it's like, okay, they've turned the corner. This is different. Everything's changed. The fact is, nothing had changed. They had 2 good games in a row. And so they're basically in the same boat, now going into this brutally hard stretch of schedule. And what I said, though, is, because I think there's a lot of Florida fans who are like, why don't you just do something right now? There's no need to do anything right now. The schedule will take care of this. Either he will go on a miracle run and they'll wind up at either a playoff team or an almost playoff team. Because if you can beat some of these teams in the next stretch, you can beat all of these teams in the next stretch. Or the schedule will just tear him up. And you'll know by the Georgia game what's going to happen. And I would say option B is probably more likely than option A. Significantly more.
Andy Staples is with us at Andy_Staples, part of On3. Brandon in the chat room, a daily viewer of ours, says Andy and Ari's podcast is a daily subscription for him. 1 hour, quick, and to the point.
Yeah, very much so.
We are none of those. We're 3 hours. We're slow-minded and
full of sponsors.
You're 3 people. It's takes longer.
We all get 1 hour. Yeah,
4 hours a day.
That's right. We all get 1 hour.
Yes. So you can get that podcast wherever you get ours as well. They do a fantastic job. All joking aside, Andy is on the Alexander Shinara Trial Attorneys Hotline. Speaking of writing teams off, because everybody's written Florida off, understandably. Last year about this time, I also wrote Notre Dame off because they lost to Northern Illinois, and you just assumed, well, there's their runway, they're done, they'll lose another game. They never did until the end, the very end. But if they lose Saturday to Texas A&M, they've taken on 2 losses, and they've got a schedule left. Will I write them off again, Andy? Am I right to write them off again?
You can write them off. It's really going to depend on how good the rest of the schedule is. Like if USC turns out to be awesome and they beat them and go 10-2, or NC State has a really good year and you know that's part of the 10-2, then they probably could make the playoff. But looking at it right now, if they were to lose to Texas A&M and then go 10-2 with losses to Texas A&M and Miami, they could be in the same boat Miami was last year after they lost to Syracuse to go 10-2, which is out of the playoff. And the quality of your wins does matter. And so in this particular case, I think a 10-2 with the A&M game, assuming A&M is pretty good in the SEC, should be fine for them. A 10-2 with losses to Miami and A&M, you better really hope USC and some of those other teams on your schedule have great years.
Heading into week 3 of last year, nobody was talking about Arizona State, Indiana, SMU. Have you seen a flash of a team through 2 weeks that you're like, okay, this team, nobody's really talking about them, but at the end of the year, I could see them crack the top 12 and be in a college football playoff?
Well, I've been on Utah all offseason, and we saw them kill UCLA in the first week, and it was a dominant performance. Now, the thing is, we saw UCLA lose to UNLV also, so maybe it's not that big of a deal. But I thought the way Utah beat them was the way I expected Utah to play, with Devin Dampier quarterback, with those two, Spencer Fano and Caleb Lomu at offensive tackle, who are potential first-rounders, both of them. So I don't think a lot of Big 12 teams are built that way, and I don't think a lot of Big 12 teams are built to stop a team like that. So you're going to get an answer pretty quickly, because Utah plays Texas Tech in Salt Lake City next week, and that's a big deal. Weird 10 a.m. local kickoff, by the way, because it's a big noon game. But I think Utah could win the Big 12. I think they have a very good chance of winning the Big 12. I like the way they're constructed. Kyle Whittingham obviously has been a great coach over the years. They've been in kind of quarterback purgatory the past 2 years because Cam Rising got hurt in that Rose Bowl after the 2022 season when they won the Pac-12. And then it was sort of, is he too hurt to play? Is he going to play this season? He doesn't play in 2023. He does come back in 2024, but gets hurt again. So they were dealing with all that. Now they've had a full offseason with a quarterback who knows the offense, because they imported his offensive coordinator as well. And they are a fully formed team. And so that's the one. I'm really interested in seeing how they do down the stretch. But we'll probably have a pretty good idea once they play Texas Tech, which probably is the most talented roster in the Big 12, next week.
Not to continue to ping your resume, but we show your projected college football playoff every week on our show. It's a mainstay for us, and you've got Auburn right there, first team out. You've been high on Auburn. What do you like about the Tigers so far?
Well, I go back to the Baylor game, and all of the moments where they could have fallen into the traps that got them last season, they chose not to fall into those traps. Like that fourth down play where Jackson Arnold scores up the middle. That's exactly what you need to be running. Run the damn ball. You're gaining 6 yards a carry. Just keep doing the thing that works and don't get cute. And I think Auburn has a chance to do a lot of that this year. I think they're going to be effective running the ball. We'll see with Jackson Arnold when he gets under a little more pressure. But again, Jackson Arnold was in a horrific situation at Oklahoma last year. Oklahoma, you see, has changed things quite a bit. It's not just because they brought John Mateer in. That line is playing a lot better than it did last year, and they have healthy receivers. So you're seeing Jackson Arnold in a lot better situation at Auburn. He's got a lot better line blocking for him than he had last year. He has a lot better targets at receiver. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Now, here's the thing. They play Oklahoma next week. If they lose to Oklahoma in Norman, I don't think there's any shame in that. I think Oklahoma is going to be really good this year. But I'm curious to see how they play. If they're competitive in that game, they're going to be competitive against everybody. But right now, that Baylor win also looking pretty good, because you saw Baylor go to SMU and win in double overtime last week. So I'm excited to see what Auburn looks like as we move forward, because obviously they get thrown into the deep end of the pool pretty quick with Oklahoma. They've got Texas A&M fairly early. So we're gonna know what's going on though.
Well, Auburn fans, Andy, you just hinted at this. They came out of that Baylor game concerned about their pass defense. Man, Sawyer Robertson's just really good. Like, he's going to make a lot of pass defense with that.
That's the thing. And I didn't know, after that night, I was thinking, okay, what do we make of this? Is it just that they couldn't cover Baylor? Do they have some deficiencies in the secondary? Was the pass rush not getting home fast enough? No, it's probably that they played a really good quarterback.
Yeah.
I think now that we've seen Sawyer Robertson slice and dice SMU, which doesn't have the greatest defense in the world either, but that was a playoff team last year. Rhett Lashley is a great selector of talent out of the transfer portal. And I think what we're probably going to find out is that Baylor offense does that to just about everybody.
Yeah, leading passer in the nation right now, Robertson is. All right, he is Andy Staples, as we mentioned earlier. Andy and Ari, every single morning right there. They're on YouTube. You get them on podcasts, all the same places you get us. Set your alerts so you know when they're live, and give them a thumbs up like we ask you to do for us, and download their podcast, and at Andy_Staples on social media. Andy, thank you very much for the time. Enjoy week 3.
Thank you, Jens. Appreciate it.
All right, buddy. You too. Take care. Andy with us on the Alexander Shinora Trial Attorneys Hotline.